Welcome in to Greenville Grit, Greenville residents in touch on 103.7 WTIB. This is the local show that keeps you connected and in touch with the issues that affect what's happening in your community. Greenville Grit is sponsored by Ribeyes, Kid Construction, and Greenville Toyota. Now, here are your hosts for Greenville Grit, Terry Williams and Michael Overton.
Welcome to the Greenville Grit. I am Michael Overton, along with my co-host who still cannot talk, Terry Williams.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, that sounds a little better than you did last week.
Yeah.
Terry, we got a wonderful, a repeat special guest,
That's
Representative Brian Brown. Brian, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
As always, thanks for having me.
It'd be good to hear what's going on in the legislature, get a little update of things that are going on there, as well as things that could affect our area here.
Yeah.
But as we always do, we thank the sponsors for allowing the show to go on. Thank you, Greenville Toyota. If you're looking for a new Toyota or Scion vehicle or a new used car, call Greenville Toyota and the Greenville Toyota team at 321-3000, greenvilletoyota.com, or visit them in person across from Fresh Market in Greenville. We have the Overton Group, real estate professionals serving all of Eastern North Carolina with commercial real estate leasing and sales, commercial property management, residential property management, residential brokerage, and business brokerage. And we have Ribeye Steakhouse.
Oh, yes. Still
Want
like
a good
the salad
steak and a good
bars.
salad bar. I know you got a restaurant, Brian, but that's a good steak and a good salad bar at that place.
We're just a catering company, you know.
There you go.
You want a good
I know.
restaurant at night, go to Ribeye.
There you go. That's right.
You want a good
Ribeye
caterer, call
Steakhouse.
400 St. Andrews or Rev
That's
Express.
right.
Hey, you brought it up. I didn't.
Well, we got to thank Joey Wood and the Ribeyes team. They do have a location in Williamston and in Greenville at the corner of Fire Tower in Arlington. Great salad bar, great steak, pork chop. Mention the Greenville Grit and you get a surprise. And then Kid Construction Group, the...
Green builder.
That's right.
That I actually showed one of his houses this weekend.
How'd you like it?
Really, really pretty.
Awesome.
Yeah,
And he does a
nice
great
house.
job. So
Yeah.
you get the green construction, but he puts a lot of features in the house, a lot of details, and it gives you a lot more bang for your buck than a lot of the other builders do.
Really pretty,
So
lots of detail.
KCGBuildGreen.com or visit them on Facebook. We are going to go to our commercial break. We'll come right back, and we will start talking with Representative Brown. Welcome back to the Greenville Grit. Again, I'm Michael Overton with Terry Williams, and we have Representative Brian Brown. Good job, Brian, on
Good
what you
morning.
guys are doing up there. Thank you for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
And this is the start of your session since you've been reelected.
That's right. Started the second term.
That's right. So tell us about the second term. What you got going on in Raleigh?
Well, you know, it's been great, actually. It's been a different scenario, you know, this time around in this February time period than just being elected. I remember sitting back 2 years ago in February, just kind of twiddling my thumbs, going, okay, what do I do? Where are the restrooms? You know, blah, blah, blah. You know, this year I've been very, very blessed and very honored to become one of the co-chairs of the Health Policy Committee, as well as one of the co-chairs for the Education University Committee. And certainly that changes the dynamic and interest that people have in wanting to see where my head is in terms of where I want to drive the committees and where, you know, kind of my feelings on different policy measures and things. So, you know, there's certainly a revolving door at the front of my office that was not present in February 2 years ago. But it's been a great experience. I think the new leadership in the House is really making great strides. I think we're working much better with the Senate than we have in the past. And we're really trying to focus on governing in North Carolina. We've made some great transitional moves in the last 2 years. Now it's time to let those policy decisions bear some fruit and really do some good governing for North Carolina.
Well, let's talk about those two committees that you are chairing and co-chairing. What are the roles of those committees, and what influence do they have on the state and our area specifically?
Yeah, you know, and specifically for this area, you know, I think that certainly the two committees that I lobbied the hardest to be on, let alone to be able to chair. So I think it's absolutely great for this area to be on those committees. You know, from a health policy perspective, we're really talking about the policy that drives the healthcare system in North Carolina, be it at the forefront of Medicaid reform, be it at decisions that will affect Vinet Medical Center and the health community as a whole right here in Eastern North Carolina, which we all know Pitt County is truly driven by that medical industry. So being able to be a co-chair and helping drive health policy in North Carolina is going to be a superb difference maker, I think, in Eastern North Carolina at being at the table as we start to develop policy decisions, as we start to develop Medicaid reform packages, how it affects the rural areas of North Carolina, and being able to be a voice for folks like Vinet Medical Center and some of our rural physicians who provide a very different type of medical care to North Carolinians than those in the urban crest of the I-85 corridor. So just a great place to be in terms of that. When we look at the Education University University Committee, what we've actually done in the House is we took what was previously the Education Policy Committee that met and discussed and created policy for K-12, community colleges, and the university system. And we've divided up into three separate committees: the K-12 committee, the community college committee, and the university committee, so that we can really put a lot of focus on each individual portion of our education systems and really create good policy surrounding it, not be rushed in a policy discussion and committee because maybe we need to switch from K-12 to a university discussion and we only have a finite amount of time to be able to do it. So I think it's a great move from a policy perspective in North Carolina, but certainly for me, being one of the two co-chairs on that committee, being able to have a strong voice for East Carolina and the university system as a whole, as how we drive the future of the university system, I think will certainly be a great representative situation for Eastern North Carolina.
Well, I think it'd be a good time to bring the point. I believe the chancellor made a comment of concerns of our medical school closing. We got a lot of people fired up. Probably it was a good comment to make to get attention, but why don't you elaborate on where we are on that and the education probably that it takes from the state standpoint with the amount of indigent care that we do here versus what Duke or Chapel Hill does. How do we educate the other state leaders so they understand we have to fund East Carolina differently?
Well, I think the chancellor's comments were good for some people and bad for some others. It certainly gave me a lot of heartburn, I'll be honest with you. I think that rhetoric should have been present 2 years ago, not today. We've made a lot of great strides. And this is nothing that I haven't said to the chancellor. We have to make sure that what we say is very focused in what we're trying to accomplish. And, at the end of the day, what we've really done is we've changed the dialogue in Raleigh as it pertains to East Carolina University's Brody School of Medicine. We were able to completely restore the upper payment limit funding for the Brody School. We're on the cusp of being able to fully restore SODCA, and we'll do that. I have the speaker's full commitment, Speaker Moore's full commitment, and also have the Senior Appropriations Chair, Representative Nelson Dollar out of Wake County, his full commitment. The governor has now come out and said that these funding mechanisms will be in his budget. So we really have done a great job in educating the state, educating leaders as to the significance of the Brody School of Medicine, what it means for rural medicine, and what it means for just primary care in the state of North Carolina. We're the largest producer of primary care physicians that stay in North Carolina and practice rural medicine. So it is just one of those institutions that not only do we have to keep solvent, but that we have to make stronger. And I think we've made wonderful strides in doing so. Now, obviously, bringing it to the forefront in the business community, I think we've done a good job of that, but it can never be falling on deaf ears. Now, I will say in terms of the overall context of that interview that was done and that headline that was grabbed out of it, we all know how that works. And I think, as I was told, it was a 70-minute interview, and that was a portion of it and a kind of a constructed comment. So, we understand what's at stake. Nobody hesitates to say that, if we continue to lose millions of dollars each and every year and continue to make Medicaid cuts and continue to defund the Brody School of Medicine, there absolutely is a chance for it to close. Right. No questions about that. But we won't let that happen. And I think that's the message that Eastern North Carolina needs to understand, that the leaders, the business investors, and that future medical students need to understand that we're not going to allow this facility to close. It is an absolutely critical facility for the state of North Carolina, and we're going to work to make it stronger. We've had to deal with some of the ideological changes that take place in terms of how we fund, schools of medicine and those things. We're working through those. One of the biggest things that we have to continue to look at is the funding mechanism for outpatient services in terms of Medicaid for Vidant Medical Center that has been reduced from 100% to 70%. That is one of those things that we're now. This is the second phase, now that we're trying to educate state leaders on the significance of that, why Vidant received that 100% reimbursement, and what it means in terms of the private-public partnership that is Vidant Medical Center and the Brody School of Medicine. It's interesting to know that overall the entire budget for the Brody School of Medicine, about 19% of it comes from Vidant Medical Center. That's a big number.
And it is a lot.
Especially when the state funds 23% of it.
Wow.
So it's very significant to understand that we have got to reinstate that funding mechanism for Vidant so that they can continue to assist in the residency program at the Brody School of Medicine. It's just absolutely paramount.
Wow. I wanted to switch back over to education, if I can get it out of my voice. A week or so ago, and we talked about it on our show last week about how the grades came out for our local schools. And what I guess I'm concerned about, what sort of grading system overall is the state looking at tweaking that or changing that system, because it didn't come out looking too good for Pitt County, and yet it seems like to some of us that that's based on a one-day measure instead of looking at an overall, say, year measure of how our schools have done. What are you all doing to look at, that part of what's happening with our schools?
Well, I can't speak specifically as to
Right.
what that K-12 policy committee is going to do. I know, prior to us splitting up, there was a lot of talk in regarding the grading system and how it's actually going to be, how it's going to be perceived and how
Right.
it works and those sort of things. So I feel pretty comfortable in saying there's probably going to be some tweaks to it.
Right.
Speaking, very specifically about Pitt County, I have to give a great deal of credit to Dr. Ethan Linker. He has done a great job as our superintendent. He's truly leading Pitt County schools into a different area. You have teachers that are excited to go to work. You have an administration that's truly doing great things for Pitt County and strengthening our schools, understanding the fact that you have to have strong administrators inside each one of your schools to really drive the future of the school. And Dr. Linker is certainly at the forefront of that. And I couldn't be happier as I traveled the state and met with other superintendents, other
Right.
school districts and things, at how bright the future is for Pitt County under his leadership. And so from a parental perspective, I guess, let's not get too bogged down in the letter grades, because I
Right.
truly believe that Pitt County is a great county for educating your kids in public schools, and the future is extremely bright under this leadership.
So will there be any more discussion this year about teacher pay again? You all did a good job last year of getting started on that, but where is that headed now? Because I know there's been a lot of discussion, about will that be picked up again? And what direction will that be going in?
Yeah,
if you even know at this point.
I think we feel pretty confident that we're going to pick it up again. We have to look at the revenue picture.
Right.
Our first goal is to ensure that we can keep the promise of raising all teacher pay to $35,000 or above. So that's kind of goal step number one in terms of making sure that promise is kept. And then after that, it's how do we continue to push teacher salaries forward and become more competitive in the region and more competitive nationally in terms of attracting and retaining great teachers. So, we're doing that, and I think that as we continue to look at that revenue picture coming into line, we'll be able to give a better indication as to what direction we're going. Several different plans out there. I've seen a few of them. They're really strong. There's even some compensation plans that are coming out of Pitt County that are being developed internally by some really smart administrators who are going to, kind of promote it to the state and saying, look, I think this is how we can incentivize good teachers. So some really neat things that are happening at the ground level.
What have we done though, Brian? I mean, I think when I look at, I was a product of the public school system. I went to Walcoat starting in the 5th grade, and at the time we had Walcoats, then Greenville Middle School, and then EBA Cock and Rose, and I just feel like we're complete polar opposites of where we were then. I mean, it didn't seem to have the issues 20 years ago that we do today. What have we done wrong? And I mean, obviously it wasn't the Republican leadership. You've only had leadership for 3 years now. But it could be a combination of both parties. And is it too political? What have we done? Have we not given enough power to the local school districts? Where have we gone wrong in our public schools to have this huge discussion? I don't know.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I feel as though we've always had a public school discussion. We've always had how do we strengthen, how do we better, how do we incentivize teachers, how do we provide them with higher level of pay, how do we provide them with more resources in the classroom. I mean, I can remember 20 years ago my own mother being involved in school board and our local school system and how polarizing that was, and how the needs and things that took place. I can remember not having sports, for instance, as a 7th grader because of not having enough funding. So there's always been these concerns. I think that we're seeing it now more as parents and as business leaders that it's more to our forefront of our minds. So I don't think the problems are devoid from where they used to be. Do they change a little bit? Absolutely. I think the biggest problem, and I couldn't say it enough, is that everybody has a magic bullet of how to quote-unquote fix education. Well, if you want my honest opinion, number one, it starts at home. Okay, and we can't legislate that. That's
right.
not legislatable. Okay, so starting at home, getting parents involved, being a part of the process, making sure that they're engaged in their children's learning and their futures.
right.
That's step one. But we can't legislate that. As community leaders, we can certainly try to purport a higher propensity of these parents being involved. The second step is we have to understand that there is not a magic bullet to fix education. Be it Race to the Top, be it Common Core, it doesn't matter. We have to get out of the business of trying to have bureaucracy run the classroom and allow the teachers to be in the classroom and do what they do best, which is teach. I think we'd be extremely surprised if we allowed administrators to identify great teachers, keep them in the classroom, look at poor teachers, poor performing teachers, be it not only statistically but attitude-wise and just overall aura in the classroom-wise, get them into a different field and put good quality teachers in the classrooms. Let those administrators manage that, and then let those good teachers in the classrooms be able to develop their kids, develop the curriculum, and be able to educate them. Test them, obviously, but not to the level that we're doing today, because right now what we're doing is we're testing to the test. I mean, they're teaching you the test. That's it. That's what we do.
Exactly right.
And, let's look at third graders. There's been so much conversation around third grade, how much testing there's being done, being able to read by third grade. All of those things are extremely important aspects. But at the end of the day, we're talking about an 8-year-old. And we're talking about a child who is 8 years old who is either going to create some type of lifelong love for learning, or is going to shut off and say, I hate school. And we lose them. We lose them forever. And that's what we're doing right now is we're creating children who are 8-year-olds saying, I don't want to go to school anymore. I don't like it. It's not fun. My teacher's not having fun. They're not creating an environment for me to want to be there because they're stressed out. They're not being able to teach the way that they thought they were going to be able to teach. And the whole system is just not functioning the way that they'd like to see
I
it.
think a lot would change if you had to learn how to read in the first grade. I think we're losing a lot of educational
And my
time
kindergartner is
in
learning to read
second
right
and
now.
third grade
Absolutely.
because kids don't know how to read, and
That's right.
teachers are trying to teach what would be a third grade level, and they're getting first grade level readers, and it's really quite sad.
It is.
Because they're losing valuable educational time. The kids are not.
Absolutely.
Of course, they're not having fun. They're in third grade and can't read. They
Absolutely.
don't know what's going on
Absolutely.
anywhere. So I think that's important, and I think too. I think the kids get tired in third grade of being tested.
Mm-hmm.
When are you gonna teach us? When are you gonna teach us? Do we have another test today?
That's right.
And so that's all that they look forward to. And third grade is just such an important
you gotta-
transitional grade.
That's right.
That I think we need to back up on that first, second, and third.
Mm-hmm.
Need to decide if third grade is going to be boxed in with K through 2, which it probably should be moved back a little, or are we going to move it up? Should it be more like fourth grade? I think it's just such a critical grade, and I think they've put too much pressure on testing
Yep.
to me.
Yeah, no doubt. We agree with that.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of conversations right now of how we pull back on the amount of testing,
Right.
and really try to develop a system that's going to actually work well. Let's get a baseline for students as they come in the door at the beginning of the school year in the fall. Let's get a baseline for the end of the year. Where did they go? Where did they learn?
Right.
I think that a lot of our kids that are coming in fall that are not proficient, they're losing a lot of ground in the summertime. So how do we try to reinforce that in the summertime, because they're not going home, they're not reading, they're not doing math, they're not engaged in the education process. So how do we try to work through those parameters and really make that work, and try to create a classroom scenario where the teacher can go in and actually teach the lessons without having to speed up for some groups, slow down for some, and teach
Right.
to the middle, because that's what's really happening is we're teaching to the middle, and we have these two different segments that are truly being left behind.
And I think two things need to happen. Number one is the third grade intergrade testing needs to have the material in it that third graders are supposed to be
right.
learning.
Yeah.
It's way above their heads, and they don't even understand the questions. The second thing goes back to your parental involvement, and I believe that that's going to have to be shifted to local schools, the principals in local
Unfortunately.
schools really pressing and having special attentive programs for parents to show them how to involve
Yeah.
themselves in their kids' lives, because I say 50% of the parents in some schools don't even know how to get involved.
That's right.
Some of those weren't educated themselves, unfortunately,
That's
and
right.
they don't even know where to start.
That's right.
They're depending on the teachers to do it.
That's right.
And so I think there becomes a learning for parents as well. And that's a big challenge.
Yeah.
Well,
You
and I
know.
agree with you. I think everyone's going to have an opinion too of how to fix it.
know.
Unfortunately,
You're
there's
right.
there's no magic answer.
We do
I just-
have probably 3 different
Yeah,
opinions
absolutely.
here.
Well,
Yeah,
I think right now is the perfect time to take our
Great.
second commercial break. And then when we come back, let's talk about what is going on in the legislature right now. What topics are we looking at over the next year? And so we'll be back in 2 minutes.
Sounds good.
Okay, welcome back to the Greenville Grit. We are going to continue our conversation with Representative Brown. We talked about the education, the committees that you're on, and some of the challenges that we're obviously facing here. But let's look at some optimistic things over the next 6-8 months, and you'll be on obviously before then. But what are you working on now? Your session started. What are some of the things that are happening that could have a good effect on us around here?
Well, I think there's a lot of great things, and I think, again, as I kind of mentioned in the beginning of the show, a big portion of what we're focusing on this session is governing, because we did make some really strong, transformable changes here in North Carolina in the last 2 years. So really being able to govern and make tweaks to that as those things bear fruit, and I think they truly will. And you're starting to see companies start to look at North Carolina in a very favorable light in terms of our tax climate and what we are doing from a regulatory position and things of relocation here to North Carolina. So, we're extremely excited about that. So, we'll kind of see how those things kind of shake out. Other than that, the major things that we're working on from a policy perspective is Medicaid reform. We're extremely optimistic we'll see a Medicaid reform bill in the next 3 to 4 weeks that'll actually be
Let's
published.
define Medicaid reform.
We've talked a lot about, kind of the Medicaid system in North Carolina. There's a lot of pressure to expand Medicaid, for instance, and we continue to talk about, our unwillingness to even have the conversation of expanding Medicaid until we can shore up our own Medicaid system as a whole in North Carolina right now, which is to provide us with a little bit of budget predictability in terms of Medicaid and to focus stronger on outcomes for our Medicaid patients so that, they're getting the care that they need and provide the long-term health benefits for the state, as a whole. So that's really what we're working on in terms of a Medicaid reform package as to how we completely re-evolve Medicaid in the state of North Carolina, provide better care to the patients and more budget predictability to the state and ultimately the taxpayers of North Carolina. So a lot of work's gone into it. There's a lot of really good policy in it. I think that it bodes well for rural North Carolina and rural physicians and rural hospitals. So I'm really excited about it and really optimistic about what Medicaid reform is going to mean. And I think there's a lot of us, including the governor, that has said once we can try to accomplish this, we certainly don't think the door on Medicaid expansion is closed. And now we can go back and say, how can we creatively expand Medicaid and provide the care to the rest of those patients?
Did you go to the economic summit that Dr. Niswander had?
Did not get to go.
It's fantastic. I don't know if you had a chance
I
wasn't
heard it
there.
was great.
to go, but one of the things he showed us, Greenville's doing great, Pitt County's doing great, the state's doing great. I say not great, but good. No reason to have too much alarm. But he gave a warning, and he showed the northeastern part of our state and how absolutely difficult of a circumstance they're going through right now. And his warning was this: if we don't help this area, it is going to affect Greenville in a negative way. What do we do? How do we hit, and I know far western part of the state and even the southern middle part of the state and especially the eastern part of the state, but northeast specifically, how do we get that? I know the crescent, that's where the money is. That's where everybody talks about how great things are, but how do we solve this problem? How do we address these areas that are going to have and they are having a negative effect.
No
I can tell you
question.
from commercial real estate and you too, they are having a negative effect.
No question. I tend to look at it at a different perspective. I don't see it as the dire issue of North Carolina. I actually see it as one of the brightest opportunities in North Carolina. When we see what is going on in the Norfolk region, being able to potentially tap into that in the northeastern part of our state it's unsurmountable, the opportunities that we actually could have. Now, how do we get there is the question. And how we have to get there is we're going to have to focus on infrastructure needs and not just roads, because, roads is one component of that infrastructure, but the other infrastructure is looking at how do we get data, how do we get fiber, how do we get those type of things that actually entice companies to come in, not just shell buildings and not just roads. So I think we have some good transportation plans that can put some dollars in the northeastern portion. The governor is completely committed committed to tying us into that Norfolk region and capitalizing on the economic competitiveness that we're seeing coming out of that region. From an IT perspective, I can tell you that we're doing a lot surrounding data centers, which are really driving money into the rural areas to create data centers in the rural markets. So we're really trying to institute some good things that could potentially benefit the northeastern portion of this state and allow us to capitalize on some of the across-the-border activity that we truly can. When you look at it, from a real estate perspective. If you are a company that is bringing stuff in from the port, would it be cheaper to build in North Carolina, or would it be cheaper to build right there in the hub? The reality is that the real estate and the taxes and the economic benefits are much greater on this side of the state line than on that side of the state line. It's just how do we get that freight, those goods, and the human capital in and out of that region, and entice people to say, we want to build a house there, we want to put our families there. So strengthening our school system, strengthening every component of northeastern North Carolina is critical. But I think we can do it, and I think if we can do it, it'll certainly be an extremely bright spot for North Carolina.
Has there been any further discussion about going deeper in the port in Moorhead?
Yeah, there are a lot of discussions surrounding that. Congressman Walter Jones was able to secure about $4.5 million for dredging. We're having some obstacles surrounding that. It's end of season in terms of these dredging companies that come in and dredge the ports. So we're trying to work through some of the bid issues in terms of the price of the bids. But at the end of the day, it's a short-term fix. We've got to work on a long-term fix for the Moorhead City Port. And if we do so, I think that's another great beacon of opportunity for North Carolina to be able to get goods and services in and out.
Well, there's no doubt. Brian, thank you again for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
We enjoy having you on every few weeks. But thank you for joining in. And again, thank our sponsors, Greenville Toyota, Kidd Construction Group, the Overton Group, and Ribeye Steakhouse. You can see us on Friday night at 6:30 on Cable 7, as well as Saturday morning at 9:30. And until then, we will see you next week.